Hi everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Code. In almost every conversation today about AI and retail, it's always about the customer, what they see, what they search, what the agent buys on their behalf. It's almost all about that front door. But there's always a side of the store that I think gets a lot less airtime. There's the people inside it, the colleagues, the technology they use to do their job, the fragmented apps they've got to go and switch between when trying to serve a customer. My guest today thinks that's what the most important AI work sits today in retail. Corie Wiren leads the digital transformation for H&M. Last year, she delivered and designed a whole new experience across the board for about 70 markets for H&M, 6 months ahead of schedule, which was brilliant. And now she's moved to something I think which is arguably harder, is trying to simplify technology for all the people on the back end and the day-to-day stuff that they rely on. Corie, welcome, and really great to have you here.
But thank you so much, Stanley. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Perfect. Corie, I think speaking to you, I think you kind of started in a lot of different areas before H&M. One of the big ones, I think, was chief of staff in Oregon's politics space. How has that kind of shaped you, and how have you kind of seen that helped you to think differently about the technology transformation in the retail space?
It's such a good question. If we had talked 15 years ago, I thought that was going to be my life. I was going to work in politics for the rest of my professional career. And really took away a lot from that experience. On the surface, these sectors can seem completely different, right? They can seem like different worlds, but I think they share such a foundational reality that oftentimes tech and corporate overlooks. And I think that's the necessity of building a coalition to get people genuinely on board. You can't just force a mandate down from above. And in tech, I think we have this natural bias towards thinking if we build a great platform or push a new piece of code, the job's done. There's an expectation that people will just sort of seamlessly fall into line because leadership says so. And what politics taught me was you could have the most perfect policy, the most advanced technology in the world, the greatest idea, but if you haven't done the foundational work to articulate the vision, to establish trust, to bring stakeholders and people along with you, it really doesn't matter how great you think something is. True transformation requires never forgetting who you are there to serve and why. It's also clear communication, it's alignment, and I think honestly, it's celebrating people along the way. You have to take the time to make people feel valued. You want them to feel change is something they're excited to be a part of instead of it being forced on them. And to be fair, right? Politics doesn't get this right 100% of the time, and corporate isn't always wrong and doesn't understand that we need to build support for transformation to stick. Human nature doesn't change whether we're in the public sector or at a massive global enterprise. We can't mandate a culture shift. So I think one of this huge takeaway is the need for empathy and getting people on board and building a winning team. And if we can do that, then we can take on huge transformations.
Absolutely, and especially in this world of AI that's sped up this change so much. And I think the change, especially in retail, is so much broader.
Yes, agree.
But you've also then, after your kind of area in politics, you've then kind of stepped into some of the financial services space at Vanguard, and then e-commerce at Zalando, etc. And then obviously now the big kind of retail shift. What are you kind of seeing as almost the same in terms of this big AI shift? And is it specific to retail, or do you think there's kind of a more global shift across that with AI's driving?
Well, to be fair, it's been a few years since my time at Vanguard and Zalando. So, I think the world has changed at sort of a lightning speed since then. But I think regardless whether it's, an H&M, a Vanguard, a Zalando, we're all trying desperately to leverage these new tools to be more successful in business. And whether that's increasing efficiency, getting better at understanding our customers, what they want, what they need, and ultimately at the end of the day, it's selling more. Whether that's more sneakers, more t-shirts, more ETFs. I mean, it's how we can be smarter about what we do and operate in a more efficient way.
And that's a very interesting kind of look at that, right? Because as you say, everything is about the customer experience. How can we sell more to a client, sell better to a client, give them that omni-channel experience, use AI on the back of driving all of that. But in your current project, you're kind of looking a little bit at the other side of that coin and always looking internal and saying, well, how do we enable our people more to be able to serve our clients better, but to work better and things? Why do you think that's so important now, and especially in H&M? You know, what is the big difference that's going to make for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's an enormous opportunity for us. You can walk into any H&M store globally, and you'll realize very quickly we ask an immense amount from our store colleagues. It's a very dynamic environment. It's very interrupt-driven. It requires constant context switching. One minute you're handling inventory, the next you're setting up visual merchandising, and the next you have a customer standing in front of you demanding help with a return or looking for a shirt in a different size. I mean, our store colleagues are constantly being asked to do more and to do so with less. So I think this idea of shifting to the other side, where many companies look at AI and again go back to how can we use this to sell more to the customer. So for us, how can we use AI to make the job easier for our colleagues in store? It's such a great opportunity to transform the business. If we can use AI to be smarter about things like how we plan shifts, how we manage inventory logistics, and streamline the administrative tasks, these things that slow down our teams behind the scenes, we can remove some of that friction that they face every day. And I mean, to be clear, right, the goal isn't to micromanage colleagues. It's not to optimize them like machines or robots. But ideally, at the end of the day, we can run our stores in a much more efficient way. And if we can automate manual tasks where it makes sense, it means that we free up staff to focus on the thing that AI can't deliver, and that's outstanding human-to-human customer service.
And that's massive, because that is really, to your point, what drives that kind of in-store sales and in-store kind of really kind of client service and things as well. Now, in order to drive this, I think you spend quite a bit of time yourself just sitting in the stores, understanding things, which is a really interesting approach to it. What are some of the big things you've learned? You know, what are some of the big things you've seen there?
Yeah, I had such an incredible opportunity to actually go work in the stores, follow people around, lots of on-the-ground research and interviewing and observations. And I learned many things, but coming from digital, where we sometimes have a bit of a bad habit of, designing and building for perfect circumstances, it was very clear that on the shop floor, a perfect circumstance rarely exists. So when we look at, a dashboard or, tracking interactions, that's great. But in this real world, very dynamic environment, that only shows us part of the story. And what we're missing is the creativity that's required from store colleagues to find workarounds when the tools don't work or when the network is down, whether they're, using their personal phones or manual spreadsheets. I mean, they are endlessly creative in finding ways to do the job we ask them to do. So getting to see that reality, interact with people that we ask to use the tools we build, it just provided such a deep and richer understanding of what's the problem to solve and how we are or not solving that today. So it forces you to see the actual conditions that they operate. And I think really then made me start to question, like, how do we evaluate what success looks like? So it shouldn't be, did we deploy a tool, by this month or this day?
Yep.
It's, did we actually make their jobs easier? And are we solving the right problem?
That is so important, because I think something what I've seen certainly is that a lot of times we do all these AI experiments, but most of them, and a few of them are looking almost, here is a solution, looking for a problem to solve, rather than understanding that problem really deep and then using AI to solve that, which, I think is probably a big driver for you guys as well.
Oh, completely agree. And I mean, at the end of the day, right, like we operate a brick and mortar retail store. So the tools can only go so far. There will always be things that we have to do manually that we can't replace people with, automated solutions. So it's really about seeing where we can make things easier and about understanding what are the things that we will always have to be doing, hands-on.
No, absolutely. Well, what struck me, what you just said as well, was about, it's always about understanding what's the real problem we're solving, and what are our people looking for, and how do they want to be helped, what are the clients looking for them to do. And as in this case, what I find interesting is when you're doing it for a customer first perspective, they choose to use these AI tools, etc. But if it's you doing it for your employees and your people, they don't really choose to use it. It's kind of just there. They have to use it, and they have to kind of move forward with that. How are you guys going to focusing on really building something there that is useful to the people, but that they want to be using and things as well?
I think it's such a good and very important question. I mean, there's a lot of information right now that I think it's important to acknowledge. And there's so much tension around AI, full stop, right? Not just for customers and businesses, but I think people are genuinely worried about job security, about being replaced, about environmental impact, return on investment. I mean, I think there's a lot of conversations right now. So it doesn't help us to pretend that those anxieties don't exist or aren't valid. I mean, there's real impact to people's lives. So I think first step is just acknowledging that, and then really working on demonstrating value for the individual. So that burden of proof is on us. We as leaders and as product builders, it's not about, giving a speech. We have to deliver functionality that's so obviously helpful, people want to use it. And it's moving away from these tools that require creative workarounds. It's finding the solutions that are, like we went back to, right, actually solving the real problem. How do we make the tools that we provide for store colleagues smarter and genuinely easier to use? So it's taking those real world observations, turning them into real world software, and then bringing in the people who are building these tools for. So, making them a part of the validation process, listening to their feedback, because if we can make them the primary beneficiary of these new capabilities, for instance, automating administrative tasks, freeing up more time for customer interaction, that's a win. And I think continuing to deepen that relationship between our end user, which is the store colleagues, and us building the tools, we can continue to demonstrate that we're not just building for the company, but hopefully improving the individual's experience.
That sounds amazing. So that co-creation, I think, is almost at the core of all of this, is building it with your people, not to them most.
Yes.
Perfect. And I know most of this, I think, this is almost against the blueprint that you guys started when you redesigned the whole of the digital experience for H&M over across 70 markets, which was impressive in its own suite. But I think 6 months ahead of schedule, which was even better. And that doesn't always happen, right? As a lot of our people struggles with this, and there's a lot of roadblocks and things always in this space. Walk me through what that kind of looked like from the inside, and you guys kind of looked at that and really redefined or reimagined that experience.
Well, I mean, let's start with being completely honest. Like, how it started was a bit of a hope, a dream, like a really healthy dose of optimistic naivete. I mean, we started with the first iteration. So we called that the DK pilot, DK short for Denmark. And within that, we made a fair number of mistakes. It was such a great lesson for us to look back, because even though we made those mistakes, that pilot was critical. We used it as tangible proof to be able to build coalitions, to get people on board. We worked with leadership across the entire company in order to have clear mandate and true partnership. So breaking through silos. And if we hadn't been able to do that and have our leadership speak with one voice, give this priority, and then also at the same time creating that sort of groundswell to get people on board, it never would have happened. We had to believe in the impossible. We had to convince others to take the leap with us, and then we had to make some really bold and uncomfortable decisions along the way in order to get there. But I think by listening to our partners and our stakeholders, by taking concerns very seriously and addressing them, it didn't always mean that everyone agreed. I really love the disagree and commit mantra, and we used it a lot. Yeah. But through that and that like mutual respect and transparency, I think we were able to move a large number of teams and do so with such efficiency. And whether that's, through our partnership with you, I mean, really helping us to professionalize our rollout strategy, sort of transitioning from, more of a like chaotic startup mindset to more precision engineered global rollout. I think it was so important. And then like at each step, making sure that we were learning lessons and incorporating those learnings into, the next rollout and the next milestone. So not only did we finish 6 months ahead of schedule, which like you say is really phenomenal, but we also didn't have a single P1 incident, which is unheard of. Like, it's just amazing.
Working. That's brilliant. But and I think that ecosystem that you spoke about, is so important around yourselves and all your partners and everybody kind of almost becoming one team and moving forward towards one goal.
Yeah. If we hadn't, I just don't think we would have been nearly as successful as we were.
So what stood kind of out for you? I mean, this, as you said, this kind of formed a blueprint almost for, how you're driving some of these reimaginations, especially with AI moving forward. What kind of stood out for you as almost what made it copyable, or, what kind of helped us create a blueprint for you?
I mean, this is going to sound a bit flip, but success, right? Within any massive organization, if you aren't delivering, no one's going to copy it. And so I think that was step one. But if we're being serious, like the way to turn sort of a project into a global model really goes back to how we structured, I think, the governance, how we showed the importance of alignment. So bringing leadership along the journey from day one was so important, making sure that it wasn't just one sponsor, but again, like cross-functional, cross-disciplinary leadership speaking with one voice was so crucial for us being able to move quickly. And then through that also really embedding design and research and rigorous testing and that constant iteration and making that this single repeatable engine. And then with all of those pieces working at the like fundamental level, anchoring everything in our identity. So who are we as a company? Who are our customers? Why are we doing this? And with everyone able to sort of answer those questions and have agreement on, the same vision and the why we're doing this and who we are, it allowed us to, answer that up front and continue to deliver results over and over and over again. Meaning we didn't just ship, a product or a design update, it really was showing a proven methodology, and it made people feel really safe in adopting that as a blueprint.
I mean, alongside this kind of structured methodology that you guys are driving and the learnings and all the stuff that came in, you also had a stream that was a bit more unstructured, which was more AI experimentation and be more speculative, some stuff across, customer interaction, experience service models, those type of things. How did you kind of manage that within this well-structured program? And did that change some of your thinking or insights and things as you guys went along?
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that we held similar across the two is definitely cross collaboration. I think it's so important to break out of our silos and work with partners, right? We're such a massive company that no one person does any of this alone. And we also benefit so much from some really deep expertise in different fields. So, with this stream, more speculative work, I was able to bring in partners from our more creative arm and also our innovation team. And so together, we're able to look at a problem and bring our expertise and challenge each other. And in the end, I think that makes for a much healthier and sort of robust discussion. But when I remember some of the early conversations when we started, and this is going to sound really silly, but I thought customer behavior would change even faster than it has. And I mean, don't get me wrong, right? It's shifting at this incredible, unprecedented pace. But there still is this gap between what technology can do and what humans are comfortable with. So with all of the macro uncertainty, whether that's, consumer backlash, anxiety around data privacy, watching sort of this race between the different, large companies, who's providing the best model, who's the right partner. I mean, all of these varying conversations, I think, has sort of slowed down what the right answer might be, and making it very clear that there's no perfect master plan, right? We have to try a lot of things. We have to be willing to fail. We have to, I think, really let go of this idea that we can future-proof anything at this point. So it's much more about how can we experiment really fast in a lightweight way and see what customers are genuinely game for and what they're not quite ready for yet.
And that's a really interesting topic because, certainly more and more people are starting to use agents to do their shopping for them, or that retailer digital experience, as to your point, changes so fast. Customers are kind of holding back to what they want to do. But a lot of it is kind of changing. And does digital experience actually matter anymore? Or do we still use the homepage when we do? How are you guys seeing this kind of AI evolution from a client side really changing that behavior, or what people are doing, or how they want to buy for that matter?
Oh, I think it's such a good question. We had so many wild ideas about how customers might shop, or, what sort of interface they want to interact with. And I think still today, if you know what you want to buy, or you have a fairly decent idea of the need you're trying to solve, whether that's, I need a refrigerator and it needs to be these dimensions, or I'm going to a wedding in Milan, what's the weather? What should I pack? This is the theme. Then AI agents, conversational search, all of these different tools are really helpful. And I think we can see increasing adoption rates. Every company that I know of that is selling clothing is looking at how to make that experience more conversational, to provide better recommendations and, smarter guidance. But I think where we haven't solved the problem, and where maybe not the traditional homepage, but still an experience from, a brand like H&M, is what if you don't know what you want? because there's still this very deeply rooted human desire to be inspired and delighted, to sort of wander into a space, whether that's a digital space or a physical space, and find something unexpected. So probably not the static homepage that we're used to, but there's still absolutely a need to move from this sort of transactional directory to something that can still delight and wow people when they're not expecting it.
How are you guys looking to kind of enable people to be able to deliver that human-to-human touch and have the right information at their fingertips and things as well?
That is a great question. I mean, right now we are absolutely in sort of iteration mode, and we're talking about the double or triple diamond. We're in the very wide open space where there's lots of different ways we could be looking at doing that. But I think it's, again, for us, if we're thinking about in the physical store, it's this blend of how do we leverage technology to make the human interaction richer and better. And we've seen some really interesting examples from various companies in different industries. But I think it's about not letting sort of the device or the technology be sort of the block between the human interaction. So however we do that, whether it's through voice or mobile devices, it should be about enriching instead of, making it sort of a hurdle to climb over.
And that's so important. I think, AI is so powerful in what it can do, but we got to figure out where does the actual value sit and what's actually going to deliver that exact value for you. So that's great. So what's something you think almost everybody in retail tech are kind of wrong about or kind of talking about at the moment that, we should kind of relook or rethink about?
I think it's really hard to say everyone is wrong about something, but one of the pitfalls that I've seen is this mistake right now that companies think there's a single or definitive answer. We want absolute certainty. Either AI is the silver bullet that will save retail, or it's a passing hype cycle that we can safely ignore. And I've heard both sides of that conversation, internally and externally. And I think the challenge for a company like ours and others is that neither of those is true. The reality is we're all going to be operating in this world of uncertainty, but also very rapid transformation. And with that, there's no one right way forward. And I think that's really hard when you're managing a business or making decisions. So I think what the industry gets wrong is we can't wait for a perfect proven roadmap to emerge before making decisions or before we act. And that it's how we look at doing multiple simultaneous things to test and learn and be open to ambiguity. Because I think if we, as an industry and other companies, if we're not willing to iterate and fail and pivot much faster than maybe we have historically, we're going to get left behind.
Hey, for you, what is the kind of one tool that's really changed your life for you? I know for me, it's been Claude has been, it's really changed how I work, what I do on a daily basis. What is it like for you?
I mean, it's the same answer. I use Gemini in my personal life right now. I use Claude too. We're a Microsoft company, so using Copilot in my professional life, but I use them daily. I like to sort of pit them against each other to have them look at and critique their answers. But it's absolutely changed the way, I operate in my personal life, in my work life, and whether that's, when working on digital strategy or planning a trip or, undertaking some new home repair project. It's really shifted the way that I approach things. I think there's also, we can't just take the output on face value. That's also really important. I mean, we still have to use our own common sense. There's a lot of need to push back on some of the answers, check for hallucination. But still, it's incredible how much faster it's made me, how much more efficient, how, able to sort of challenge my own thinking, which when you're sort of, in your own head are working on something in isolation, that's so valuable. And it's not always great to call your colleagues at, 11:30 at night. So I think that's really helpful. And I love that the tools are evolving at such a pace that it forces me to evolve as well. So I'm constantly learning. And as they change, I change, and there just always seems to be a new task or skill or something I do that can be improved or changed or challenged, and I love that constant iteration.
I always think about how my life has changed. When I was a kid, my parents also always used to tell you, don't never get in the car with strangers. Then I became older, and then I could go find a car to get into, order an Uber to get into a car with a stranger. Nowadays, I don't even have to look for it anymore. I just finds it and that's there when I need it. So, yeah, it's amazing how that just, your whole life has just kind of completely changed in work and outside.
Yes. And now we've gone full circle where you can get into a car without a driver. So you don't have to worry about being a stranger.
Yeah, I tried that in San Francisco and it's a very different experience.
Oh, amazing.
Exactly. Corie, thank you so much. And as we kind of close out today's show, what is that one piece of advice you'd give to people nowadays facing this massive AI transformation and business transformation in similar roles to yours? I mean, you've kind of been through it as well, as so to speak.
Yeah, I think it goes back to your first question about what I learned working in politics all those years ago. And it's really that transformation isn't a technology problem, right? I mean, technology can solve loads of issues. We're going to continue to get faster at using that technology, at automating more. I mean, those things will happen. But the thing that it can't solve is trust. So really, fundamentally, I think key to any successful transformation, turnaround, evolution, it requires building authentic relationships. It requires establishing, a trusted voice and position across the organization. You can't sit and lead from, an ivory tower or the office. Again, like back to the importance of really getting in there and doing the work and seeing the work and leading by doing. So get in there and understand the reality of people's problems and listen, because I think when we're able to build these coalitions and do so in a way that, as leaders, we can be humble, not take ourselves too seriously, right? This is work. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be hard. But I think doing that in a way where have a bit of sense of humor, bring some humility, and then bring people along with you. Technology can't solve that. And if that exists, then the technology can do its job and make these massive transformations possible.
Perfect. I think that's a great piece of advice, absolutely, for everybody listening. Corie, thank you so much. It's been great being part of your journey and hopefully being part of your journey moving forward as well as Symphony. And thank you so much for joining us. It was really great to hear your story.
Oh, thank you so much, Stanley. It was such a lovely conversation, and I look forward to many more with you and the other folks at Symphony soon.
That's brilliant. Thank you.